Welcome to Recovery, the Whole Enchilada, and I'm here with my friend,
Heather Hageman.
lovely Heather Hageman. And between us, we have over 40 years of sobriety, and in this podcast, we explore the layers of healing and transformation in recovery. So we welcome you to join us for insights and guidance and inspiration as we seek recovery, the whole enchilada of self-awareness, of self-love, and true fulfillment. So let's journey together. What do you think about that, Heather?
Sounds like a plan.
And today we're going to be talking about wellness and self-care practices, which is always one of my favorite topics because I don't consistently do that. Even with as much sobriety as I have, life gets in the way many times. And with this topic, we're going to dive into self-care techniques and wellness practices that contribute to a fulfilling life post-recovery. I have learned to take much better care of myself in recovery because I care about myself. And that means the basics like eating well and exercising and getting enough sleep. And at the same time, as important as meditation is, I don't do it as much as I could. Because when I do it, I feel so much better. So what do you think about that?
It's a really good topic. Because it's not something I could hear very well when I was new in recovery. All I wanted to do was just stop drinking, stop feeling bad. That feeling that phrase, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Whenever I hear that, I go, oh my God, I remember that feeling. And so I think in the beginning, I just wanted to stop drinking. I didn't really know what to do next. So my self-care in the beginning is I started smoking cigarettes. I'm just telling you that kind of because if I'm giving up one thing, I'm going to go for another thing. And I did it. I smoked cigarettes for about a year to try to help downregulate me. When I look back at that though, Peg, I feel like smoking is just another way of learning how to breathe and using your breath to how to calm your system. It's maladaptive, but when you think about smoking, you're taking that breath in with the smoke and you're blowing it out. So I'm just saying that's an interesting thing to think about. So if you're smoking right now, just know that you're just trying to do breath work to feel better. After I did my first initial 1 year and had to stop smoking, I tried to eliminate the things that were harming me. But that first year was really tough. That was tough for you too. Do you remember what you were doing as far as self-care the first year? Because it was just getting to a meeting, working the steps. I mean, there was very little I could really focus on, but to just stay sober one day at a time in the beginning.
Yes, I smoked as well. And I that was just something to like a coping mechanism for me in my first year and my first few years, actually. And it was a habit I picked up while I was drinking and using and tried to quit 4 times cigarettes. I finally did, but it was not an easy process. In many ways, for me, it was harder. And because I could do it anytime, anywhere if I wanted to. And so I learned probably in my second year or so how to start modifying habits. I knew that the recovery journey that I was on was to help me to stop drinking destructively, to help me stop drinking, period. And that being removed from me was a miracle. And I thought, well, if that's the case with my alcoholic drinking, I'm sure I can get the help I need to start removing some of these bad habits from my life, including smoking, because I knew it was bad for me. And yet at the same time, that part of my brain wasn't the part of my brain that compelled me to smoke. The part of my brain that compelled me to smoke was the part of me that says, oh, you want to feel better about yourself and in your skin. So this is what you're going to do. And for me, it was that sort of lizard brain, maybe it's called. You would know it better than I. but that sort of
It's your
overrode.
limbic system, yeah, it's your reptilian, it's your older brain that's like, "Feel good, more dopamine, feel good, I want more."
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
and that's
cigarettes for me and candy, like sugar was a big one. I do like sugar, and I need to watch that because it's again, I'm not advocating one way or the other if anyone should eat it or not eat it. I know for me, it was not refined sugar is not my friend.
and I think that surprised me for some reason. All of a sudden, now I'm smoking and eating sugar, and I'm actually going to meetings that have bowls of sugar, bowls of candy, and people are saying to me, "Don't worry about it, just eat the sugar right now." But you know what? That thinking is not really. I think it's unhelpful now. I mean, that was over 20 years ago. I would love it if we had fresh fruit at a meeting, cut up fruit, something very healthy, because so much of the recovery process is learning how to start at ground zero. How do I feed myself? How do I take care of my skin, my body, taking showers, even just the simplest thing of when I get up in the morning, making my bed. I mean, just making my bed. And so I was thinking about the marble analogy. Isn't it like the first year you lose your marbles, the second year you get your marbles back, and the third year you learn how to play with your marbles? So this idea of like it's this first 3 years, I think you have to be you try to do little baby steps of self-care and not be too hard on yourself because you're really trying to change a pattern that you've had for a long time. And I mean, I drank for 20 something years and then to all of a sudden now come into this and I want to feel good and I'm feeling terrible. So the journey is really, like I said just a little while ago, it's like trying to eliminate the things that are going to kill me the quickest. So that was alcohol and drugs. And then smoking was gonna kill me quickly, and I ended up developing a lung autoimmune thing from cigarettes, thank you very much. So just to say, there's some of us need really intense consequences to drop things, and I've often wondered with the sugar if it's gonna be diabetes or what it's gonna take for this person in recovery to get it. But I mentioned before, Peg, and I'll just say this again. I mean, I really see that a lot of what I'm doing is I'm just wanting to feel better. I'm very uncomfortable with the feelings and living on life on life's terms, the ankle biters that got me, and I want to explode and react. And I just feel like the journey is to really stay in the moment and work on being present and affirming that nothing's going on right here. It's all in my mind, these obsessive thoughts, right? And so what the words to describe that is the frequency of addiction is still in my mind. And so addiction to me is that it just the side effects are shame, guilt, and remorse. And so it's like I still have it going, and then I feel really ashamed when I eat a 1 pound bag of M&Ms, just as an example. I feel guilty, I feel remorse afterwards. So that's how you can know the frequency of what these behaviors are doing if that has that side effect. It's got an initial yay, this feels so good, kind of a effort sort of feeling. I'm going to eat what I want or whatever. I'm going to consume what I want. I'm going to buy what I want. Whatever something I'm doing has an initial like yes, and then afterwards you're like, what did I do? So this frequency of addiction is like a whack-a-mole, and we've got to really work on that as we do long-term sobriety together.
Agreed. That's a very good way of putting it too, because we have, or at least I had, different angles to my addiction and can still display those behaviorally. I don't have the physical uh, obsession or the physical craving for alcohol. In my case, alcohol. I didn't really do drugs, but alcohol's a drug, and I did a lot of not such great things on alcohol. And I found that in working this recovery, I needed to look at deeper layers of myself. And how that was affecting me and why I would do certain things, I rarely turned the mirror on myself. It was much easier for me to point at you and let you know what you should or shouldn't be doing. And when I would do something that was less than healthy for me, I did need to, and this is where recovery has helped me a lot, turn the mirror back on me and say, what's going on with me right now that I'm feeling this urge to eat all this sugar or escape in some other way. And I have to be aware that there's something deeper going on. And I'm feeling, as I shared with you earlier, restless, irritable, and discontented. And I'm like, what? Why? And sometimes the only why for me is the fact that I am a recovering alcoholic. And those are the symptoms of recovery. And frankly, I believe they're gifts because they're pointers. And it points me to what I need to look at. It will help me to determine what I'm feeling or what I'm trying not to feel and why. I have found that these other distractors really are pointers for me. And I also don't believe in 100% deprivation when it comes to things that are, let's say it this way. I 100% believe that I cannot drink. That is not going to happen today. And there are other times when I want that Klondike bar that's in my freezer. And maybe I've worked out or I've taken a walk or I had a healthy meal that day. I will treat myself to that, and I look at it as a treat and not as an escape. As long as I can keep a balance with that, I think what brings some meaning to life is these treats and these rewards where we have a reward center in our brain. And it's nice to have those little rewards that we can look forward to that are relatively healthy. It's balancing that because I also have the disease of more. And so if there's one Klondike bar, there might be three I might want to eat. And I've learned, okay, balance is key. I'm not going to deprive myself because then I'm going to feel even more compelled to want to do it. So I'll have myself a Klondike bar and enjoy it.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because I think for people in recovery, I'll speak again for myself, maybe you all can relate. Anytime you tell me no and tell me I can't have it, oh my gosh, I just don't hear things correctly. I'm just going the opposite direction. So I have to be very careful, and it's very important to not go black and white, all or nothing. Like you said, I have to be black and white, all or nothing kind of mentality around drinking. It's done, done. There's no it's
There's no
complete
leeway. Yeah.
abstinence. Okay, but now we got all the other things out there, and they actually call them process addictions. When does it become an addiction, and when does it just become this habit? And it's just it's a balanced habit that you have. Like every time I eat any kind of meal, and food is the hardest one I think to deal with because it goes way back to the start of life. I found a picture of myself as a 2-year old. Oh my gosh, I wanted to share it with you, Peg. Where I'm sitting on the floor and I have a lollipop in my mouth. And I had this look on my eyes like a deer in headlights, and I was just like, "That's my little 2-year-old that comes out as an adult me, and I get those lollipops." So it's like, okay, this idea of enjoying it, like you said, another thing too. So if we are going to have something, being clear that we are grounded in our routine and that we feel we're not eating out of shifting something, but just for the pure enjoyment of a dessert after a meal, let's say, and that you sit and you enjoy it. You don't gobble it up and go into a trance like you could with this stuff because a lot of it is trying to run away from feelings too. So, but it can be that way with shopping with Amazon. Oh my gosh, sometimes I get boxes on my front doorstep and I think, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, what did I am I doing blackout shopping? Doing? And I hope you were hearing that no matter how much time you have, we're still really human. I think now is I laugh at myself because I'm so goofy now. Like, or maybe I don't take myself so seriously. I think for many years I did. It was something that was told to me, stop taking yourself so seriously. But but coming back to trying to live in a way that supports your sober journey is to find a balanced way. And how does that look? And everybody has their own way of figuring this out. And for me, I have found I had to seek other sources, and I landed in yoga, and I've talked about that before. And but one of the things I love about yoga, I feel like a lot of it's very comparable to our recovery system in a sense, because what they're teaching you is to have a daily practice where you and they're not saying do yoga moves. They're saying a daily practice where maybe you get on your knees and you do a sun salutation on your knees and you breathe, or maybe you're in child's pose and you flip your hands over and you say to a higher power, relieve me of this, help me with this. So for me, because my body was the instrument of I was trying to destroy my body. My journey now is to befriend this body and say good morning to my body. Hello, hello, body, and begin to get embodied by doing some of these movements, because that's what yoga is really trying to teach you, how to get into your body and be comfortable in your skin and feel this felt sense of wholeness so that you can make better choices for yourself throughout the day. What was you saying? Pointers? Were you saying pointers?
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking pausers too. Like
Mm.
there's when these things come up, like you're feeling restless and discontent, and maybe you're reaching for the second Klondike bar or whatever. This is when we want to do the pause and really just really take some breath, like a blow out or purseless exhale, just anchor into the body, use an affirmation to stabilize your emotions. PAUSE. That's kind of what I tell myself. So anyway, but I think it starts first with what we do first thing in the morning, and it kind of sets the stage for the rest of the day, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I like those practices. I don't often do a yoga pose, but I'm going to incorporate that, I think, before I go to bed as well, especially child's pose. But opening up yourself to that day when you wake up and really setting a positive course for the day. And there have been
Yes.
times I have flown out of bed and like, "Oh, I've gotta do this," and I launch right into the list of things that I would like to get done that day, and I'm already at the end of the day by the time I go down to get coffee, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, "How is life going by so quickly?" And for me, it's because I'm always thinking futurizing things and thinking ahead versus what's happening right now and sort of anchoring myself into the floor and feeling grounded and thanking my higher power for another day and doing some deep breathing and sort of getting set like that setting of oneself in the morning for me anyway to reset or to set and to look myself in the eye and say I love you. And some people are like, "Oh my god." But for me, that works because for so long, I couldn't look myself in the eye for any reason. And today I can, and I can say to that woman, "I love you." And I truly mean that. And that for me, when I can remember if it's prayer or if it's just quick meditation or looking at myself and affirming my humanity and loving myself no matter what, that does help set the course for the day. And remember too, I can start my day over anytime. And so knowing I have this practice or these tools to use is very helpful for what can sometimes be rocky days.
So I always tell people go slow. I had to tell. I'm glad people told me over and over again, Peg, was just be gentle with myself. Be gentle with yourself. Go slow. Add little bits of things. Don't take anything away until you're ready to let it go. That was really important too. Just I didn't want to make any drastic changes. Quitting drinking was the drastic change. So, and
Mhm.
then from there, if I could just sometimes I think on my tombstone, I just want the words she never drank again or something like that in the number of years that I have, because I feel like this is one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. The other piece too, so starting your day, but also to we have as a suggestion to take these spot check inventories throughout the day, kind of check in, how you've been doing, to include in the inventory, not just about my way that I'm dealing with life, my character, maladaptive defenses that I have that I'm doing a sort of a check in on, but also to check in on the body. So doing these spot check inventory body talks too. Like, how's my mind? How's my breath? How's my body? Am I here? Do I feel myself, my feet on the ground? Do I feel, and can I take some breaths? I'll do some deep breath work. And I'll do that throughout the day. Every 2 or 3 hours, I get up, walk around, move my shoulders. We move the spine in 7 different directions. That's where our nervous system is. And so when we do this, especially if we have sleep issues, which is one of my biggest teachers, is that I will inevitably be a lot calmer going into sleep. And I will have started to, I won't be like, go, go, go. And then like, now I'm going to lie down and sleep. So now I've had this day of like checking in and making choices throughout the day to not increase my
Mm.
heartbeat through caffeine and different things, but to make choices that I really want to get to sleep. Now, the reason I mentioned sleep, Peg, is that I really believe that that's probably one of the most number one things that we really need to focus on in early recovery and continually in recovery. Because if we're not sleeping, we're not healing. And so
Mm.
sleep becomes a huge priority. And so that's something that I do and work on with myself on a daily basis. But most people that are coming to me in early recovery are not having it, they're not sleeping well.
Why do you think that is?
I think the medicine of that's been keeping them balanced, like the medicine of ethanol, and then once that's removed, I think the cortisone, all the different functioning things are now going into survival mode because you don't have that. I'm gonna be fighting or fleeing or freezing, and now I can drink alcohol and just dial all that down. And now that that's gone, all those defense physiology is coming up. So now oh, I'm anxious. I don't know how to dial it down. So by the time we try to go to sleep at night, we're so riled up. And as a lot of us do, we start doing nicotine, we start doing a lot of caffeine. Oh my gosh, do you see people in recovery drinking Red Bull after Red Bull? I mean, oh my gosh, because we're definitely again trying to feel better, but we're also not helping the healing process by focusing on better sleep.
Mhm. Right. So, you'd mentioned these sort of stimulating drinks like Red Bull and other things, which inherently there's nothing wrong with Red Bull. I'm sure. I mean, I don't drink it because I think it would like light me up, way too much caffeine. And however, I do notice the same thing. And it's a way to calm ourselves down too. And it seems sort of like counterintuitive, but that is how I believe, like, sometimes I'll use sugar thinking it'll calm me down, or coffee, or some kind of stimulant like caffeine, and it has the opposite effect. And so I enjoy like 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and that's pretty much it, because caffeine and I have a decent relationship in the morning if I keep it balanced. But if I have anything for the rest of the day, and sometimes I do, I can feel it going into my sleep time. And you had mentioned the central nervous system, and how we can become dysregulated just by life, by being triggered by life. And so, explain, Heather, a little bit about what dysregulation feels like. Because for me, I was dysregulated so often that I just found it to be a normal way of being, until I realized, oh, I can calm this down. And I liked the alternative. And so now I can, at least with that contrast, determine when I'm feeling a little dysregulated or a lot dysregulated. So share what we should be looking for when that's happening, so we're more conscious of it.
So I was thinking while you were speaking that I think we're so numb in the early years that we're kind of thawing out in a way. So you're right. We don't really know what kind of feelings we're having. Sometimes I've heard people say, I guess at what feelings I have. And so just again being that practicing that gentleness, but as you unthaw, there's going to be, I feel like this is also part of the journey of recovery. There's a lot of intensity of emotions that come. I remember feeling a lot of grief that I had lost so much of my life to
Mm,
drinking. And then I remember feeling a lot of anger at myself and or in other situations. And so there's this intensity so that, like you said, the balance isn't there. You're going up and down, and there's just, so to probably start off with would be to really focus on being safe. The most number one thing to do is to be safe in where you're living, your environment, safe in who you're hanging out with, safe with the people you call up, because all of these things are going to help your nervous system to calm down. Because the one thing we know when we're in addiction, we are isolated. We do not want help. We are going to do it ourselves and we're disconnected. So the journey back is to come out of isolation, to reach out for help, to connect, and to let people who have calmer, more regulated nervous systems be around us so that we can get that same reciprocal feeling. Because that's basically one of the defense things that we have now. It's called social engagement. And they're saying that is a really great regulator for people to come back to balance. And so, one of the things I do to try to get myself back into that social engagement, I'll reach out, call somebody. I'll go to a meeting, or I'll go and be to the studio, the yoga studio, and take a class. I mean, there's different ways, but rather than run and isolate, I go towards people
mm.
to begin that journey back to myself, because that's the first step. And the lens of safety is paramount in the healing process. And so when I do get dysregulated, which I can now feel it now because I'm in such a, I've spent so many years in this yoga path and using the tools that I've learned from recovery, the the meditation and all that different things, I can feel the, it's like a sizzling, and I'm using these fingers. It's sizzling that starts to happen around the back of my neck, starts to climb around the back of my head, and I start to get, and my shoulders start to hunch, and I start to clench, and my jaw clenches. So part of the journey would be to write down what's happening or trigger, and then to talk to the trigger in a sense like, okay, I'm feeling this. Let's talk out loud. I'm noticing. These are two words that will keep your brain online and be very helpful to keeping you in that prefrontal cortex area. You begin to say, oh my gosh, I am noticing that I'm feeling heat around my throat. I'm observing that my stomach is feeling clenchy. If you can be in this observer without judgment way of looking at yourself, you can hold it together enough and maybe to call somebody and say, listen, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'll tell you, being someone who's been in recovery for a long time, I don't do that as much as I used to, and I regret it because I know that it'll get me. It was a tool that I use and gets me out of my explosive whatever I'm going into, fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm.
Because I'll just tell you, this past week, I found out that my health insurance had gone away. Like, they completely took me off my health insurance, and it was a series of mistakes they made. So when I went to go to the pharmacy to get meds, they said, "You don't have health insurance. You don't have this." So calm Heather, grounded and breathing well, would have just gone, "Okay, it's just a mistake. It's not personal. I'm gonna call. We'll figure it out." I didn't work out like that, and I
Mm.
and I could feel it just coursing through me, and I called and left messages at the insurance company telling them I felt violated and how could they do this? I mean, it was embarrassing. So sometimes we grab it in time, sometimes we don't. But I was down, we call it down the limbic system rabbit hole, where you are at the mercy of your reactionary self. And so we have to protect that deep part of our brain, which is the limbic system. We've got to help that area to not get activated by staying in this social engagement, by being connected, by keeping language going, by talking to somebody, because we lose language in our limbic system. So these are some of the tools that I use and some of the ways I try to know where my triggers are. That would be the first step, is to know what your triggers are, and then learn how they enter your body, and then learn what you can do to move them out of you,
Mm,
whatever ways that looks. Movement, breath, and then talking to somebody. It's all perfectly packaged. That seems to help.
that is very helpful. There are times when I have felt what I call hijacked by my limbic system and feeling really dysregulated. And it can be something that I would not have thought of would be a triggering event until it happens. And so at least it brought me some education because now I know, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that life event, what seemed like a very minor situation, really had an effect on me. And I'm feeling sort of this rush of adrenaline. And I stop when this happens, I am not able to formulate words to tell you what's happening. I want to run and I don't want to deal with people. I want to do the exact opposite of what you recommended. And I see now why. And there are going to be times when I say you go into the grocery store and you're just feeling overwhelmed and this panic starts to well up in your solar plexus and it starts to take over. And you don't really have time or you're not in a situation where you can reach out to someone right away. What could you do to physically start to regulate yourself? Like, what could you do in a moment where you're feeling that dysregulation and you don't have someone there? You can't really access anyone at that time, and that's going to happen. What can we do to take care of ourselves in those moments?
It's so interesting that you mentioned the grocery store, because I think what has happened to me, because I've had panic attacks in grocery stores. So this is a good question, Peg. Is that I'm so overstimulated by all the colors and the words, and just too much of everything in front of me. And so what I will say in a situation where there's a lot of sensory eye stuff, I would remove myself. I would have to look to the ground, and I would walk out of the store. And just to remove myself and dial down the sensory, um it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's just coming at me. It's just too much. I need to kind of first, let's just start with what my eyes are seeing, and let me get myself away from where I'm at. Oftentimes walking away from wherever you are is a good start. But once I would get outside, I would rub my shoulders, and I would rub my knees, and then I would take a breath in and then out. And the
Hmm.
idea is to lengthen our exhales, because when we're in that fight or flight, we're in that chest breathing. We want to get the subdiaphragmatic area to work, to send messages to the brain. I'm not running. I'm not fleeing. Everything's well, right? So stopping your feet, going outside and looking up at the sun, looking at different things out there, looking and hearing what's out there. The touch is a good one too, but just kind of going through this like five senses. Do I have a taste in my mouth? Do I smell anything right now? Just trying to get yourself into just complete now time, and then telling yourself as you're doing this, everything's okay. Everything's okay. Don't you worry, sweet darling. Of course, you're feeling overwhelmed. You've had a lot going on in your life, darling. By calling yourself darling and sweetie, and just being really kind to yourself, and then getting on that phone and calling somebody, because that's what we help finish that last bit. Just trying to figure
Hmm.
out, or even looking at faces of people can help you. Maybe trying to smile, even though you're feeling crazy, just like smiling, or just even saying to somebody, I'm really anxious right now. So we have ways of doing this, but it is not easy. And I just know that it's the process. It's one step forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. It's just this process. We get it right, we don't. That's okay. We just keep trying. Keep trying.
I like that. Just keep moving forward, keep trying. And what I hear is really cultivating this self awareness after a time of being pretty numb and I remember when someone would ask me, "How are you feeling?" And I had no idea how I was feeling because I was so cut off from my head and my body. And so what I've learned for better self-awareness is what am I feeling right now and where am I feeling it? If I'm feeling fear, where is that fear in my body? Where am I feeling it right now? And really befriending emotions. 'Cause we have them for a reason. And I have learned that being gentle with myself, which you've brought up many times, I think that's key to not being hard on ourselves, that critical parent, if you will, that's in our head was for me a default. I could fall into that so quickly and not realize I was doing it. And really coming back to that loving higher self and saying, what you just shared, Heather, was, honey, it's okay. You're good. You're safe. And then start counting. What are the 5 things I see or hear or smell? And then the touch and really hugging ourselves, really, and touching our shoulders and whatnot. That does help bring us back to what's real. Because what's happening when that happens for me isn't real. My brain thinks it is, but it's not. And we have that sort of overriding higher self that can take the wheel and say, all is well and you are safe. And I think you are, when you mention safety, I do think that's at the root of it is fear of not feeling safe and not feeling good enough. And so those root issues or core issues are what have how recovery and of course therapy, outside help, which I 100% advocate because it's been, I mean, you and I aren't therapists, right? This is for educational purposes, our podcast. But when I've had to have therapy, I go to a professional and I get the therapy I need because they can offer me a wider perspective or a different perspective. And that has been very helpful for understanding myself because when I understand myself and I can start connecting dots, that dysregulation doesn't happen as often because I don't see it as this sort of incoming enemy that's going to hurt me. I see that I am okay. And these are the things I have to do to take care of myself. And of course, reach out to safe people and let them know, hey, I'm feeling this way right now. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling angry. And it's okay, especially women who, in my case anyway, have brought up to think that anger was not okay. Now, weaponizing anger is not okay. And I would do that when I was in my disease, is I would weaponize my anger. Today, I don't weaponize it, but I feel it and I don't look at it as the enemy. Anger with love means change. If I'm angry, but I'm not in this difficult negative place, then I can bring about the change in my life that's needed because again, anger for me is a pointer. There's something going on that I need to change in my life and within myself or in my external circumstances and utilize that as useful information. And and for me, distractors have also been people. It's some people can be like candy for me. And so I've had to learn to not give away my power to other people. And this can be, we can go into more depth on this in a future podcast. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I know for me, there are some people that can be like a drug. And it's because I thought of them as my redeemer, when in fact, my redeemer is my higher power, whom I choose to call God. But there are times when I'm like, "Oh, that person has all the answers and will make me feel whole and wonderful." And then I get hijacked again. So, whether it was nicotine or refined sugar or certain people that I could become addicted to because I did not know how to connect with that inner feedback loop that I have inside of me, that moral compass, that higher self. I had a hard time connecting with that part of myself. But when I did, I realized that I wasn't seeking this external redemption. I was getting more of that from within myself. And that has been another gift of recovery, post recovery, especially.
Well said. Thank you. Because really truly I believe the journey in for myself has been that I become a safe sanctuary,
Mm,
that I become secure. And they call it earning secure attachment, that am I am enough. And I think when we're not attached, we're avoidant, we're anxious, all the different attachment theory. I think we touched a little bit about that at growing up, that it plays out in our relationships later. But the ultimate goal is to be self sufficient, right? But also self actualized. And we have other words that's like selfish and self centered. No, I'm moving away from that. And I'm moving into just this care of the self. And so emotions are energy in motion, and that the journey is to learn that they're energies that move through. And how can we move them through, not get stuck, not act on them, but just to allow them. And one of the things that I love cueing to myself, because I heard this, it was so beautiful. Do your best to welcome everything as a curious observer.
mm,
And that's something that I learned along the way. Not let things pierce me, not let things poke me, but to just, wow, I'm noticing. And a lot of those years, I didn't notice what I was feeling, but I started with, I'm noticing. Let's start with the body. I don't know what the thoughts are, but let me just start right here with, I'm noticing my hands are gripping. I'm feeling pain in my searing pain in the back of my neck. And just as we get to know ourselves and get to know our bodies, the idea is that we become so safe and have such a internal sanctuary that externally, when that shiny bauble of a person shows up and they seem to have it
right.
all together, and I want what they have, and I'm so outer focused on them, because if I know them, they're going to give me something, and thank goodness that falls away. But for many years, we had to look to others to figure things out. We didn't have any choice. So it went on for a very long time that we had no sense of self, because we were all externally focused on how to survive our life, but also how to navigate people and figure out how we could use and manipulate and work with people. Well, we don't use anymore. That's something that ends in recovery. We no longer are users.
Right.
And so what we do now is we learn how to become generous, useful, service-oriented people, and to live our life, if we could, like a loose garment, but also to just keep remembering to just welcome everything as a curious observer with no judgment. I think the judgment thing is one of the hardest things, and we'll probably maybe talk about that along the way too. But
Exactly. The self excavation, which is really why we wanted to start this podcast, because there are insights and guidance and inspiration that come to us when we have removed that cloud of addiction and we've had the grace of having that cloud of addiction removed. And I'd like us to, in future episodes, investigate and discuss more about personal relationships and how those affect us and help us and sometimes distract us. So we can maybe think about that a little bit more. And we'd love to get your comments. We would certainly love your likes, and please subscribe and know that recovery and the whole enchilada, it's the entirety of the gifts that come from recovery, and that self-awareness, ultimately self-love. And at the end of the day, we all deserve that. So we'll see you next time.